Last year I was home in Malaysia, Terengganu specifically. I was helping my mom out with a authority to claim one of her lost land. It was pretty easy, the whole process. When I was in the authority office talking to the officer, there were a lot of people queuing to change their land title to put the land up to the market. Most of them from very small village, as people start to prefer to live out of city, private developers investing on the housing development in the village, which most of them not very far from city. I think it is pretty good deal when if you can get two or three houses from the development for exchange to your land. And then I've started to realize that this is what actually going on in my village. My neighbors started to filling up their land that used to be paddy field to get into this investment. Surprisingly, my mom actually did exactly the same thing, but a little bit different because of one of my neighbor's home recently burned down completely out, and he tried to apply for a housing program from the government. But you need to have your own land for that, and he doesn't have that. So my mom helped him out fill up her piece of land to be stable enough for his new house. So we are actually going through a very fast development, and especially housing development. This is town typology. The blue one is from a very generic development occupied by mostly third and fourth generation. The red one also new housing. This is the government housing program, also occupied by the same generation. And the gray one are the existing housing occupied by mostly first and second generation. The result from the whole development idea pretty much about the need and necessity for us to live. But this is not the right manner in moving forward, as the built environment in this village not improve at all, and it scared me because it might be worse compared to before. One of them, the walls from this generic development hurting human environment when we started to lose few qualities from previous built environment. For example, to provide privacy, we used to have a simple raised floor instead of blind on your window. These two yellow circles are the area that spent the most by the children after school. If you are noticed, they are in existing housing that still have that traditional housing character, provoking on how vernacular architecture provide defensible space compared to the new one. And those children prove it. So definitely this generic copy-paste development lacking understanding to genus loci of the village, spirit of place, thus also hurting human spirit. We used to have a lot of activities together. Kite flying, annual village cleaning. It was beautiful, but it was 15 years ago. As always, I never turned down a chance to enjoy those rural landscapes. Every day I spent my time outside, every time I got home. Every morning I used to run, climbing those hills. It was a beautiful experiment to understand my feeling, my safety, and my pacing controlled by nature, to understand how the rays from the sun filtered by the branches or leaf and produce very specific light intensity in very specific time that determine my position. So I guess everyone deserves that understanding that tremendous feeling from the time and space defined by nature's surrounding. The site located almost at the center of the town, my village. So accepting this summary conception of the abstract nature in the development, local's definition of new, the whole layout and architecture conclude on this physical configuration as socialification of contentment. Somehow it's interpreted this scenario as the alienation of human essence, and my idea to use the site as a point of correction, a fleeting correction, as a third narrator in delivering analogies. The main objective of the project are actually to increase social capital, provide education access, and sustain a rubbish system, as these qualities are the real demand of the locals that should be met by any architectural move. And it is not about need and necessity anymore, it's about creating desire. It is not easy to tell people what to do, telling this is wrong, telling people what we're doing is bad for the environment. You shouldn't change the character of the land for your own interest. And this whole developing idea is sabotaging us not just ecologically, but socially too. So the proposal should be an inequitous development, and not just that, it has to introduce suggestion and reference, a lateral thinking. As kids, they have this ability in absorbing the suspense of reality. They are from 60% of the population, the highest population, affected the most by the result of the current development. The project display structure consists of reading park, communal spaces, and recycle collection point. And they are not a formal code for play structure, but it is impossible to label two for a kid to play. Playing is their world. You give them a chair, it become an aeroplane. So if shade is their territory to play, it would be my responsibility to provide a shade. Started my design work with hierarchy of spatial concept, inspired by the town's character itself, social structure, and landscape spatial concept. For example, social concept starting with the imitation of social pattern language of the local into the site to engage with their implicit memories in dictational space, some sort of having their own way of engagement as a suggestion on preserve that trace in original freedom. Playhouse design preserving the layout of existing housing. These are the areas to play after school, impelling on defensible space theory. The playhouse area has direct interaction with a library park, a form of space, and using the landscape of existing and new vegetation as a buffer from the outside of road. It won't be a high-end product as it's going to be local source labor and materials. Any structure and space should be treated as landscape and playscape manner. And this structured spatial concept act as cultural reference in suggesting simplicity. Library design inspired by 9 to 12 post vernacular architecture that define practicality and local construction method. Every material should be cooperative with the surrounding. Materials transparency blurring the boundary between nature and us. That lend small gesture, great importance that value craft and material. I was invited to the soccer game, how the rules altered to have fair game, seeing the response and inviting engagement through the perspective of kids. From tallest tree that creating abstract boundary and lower player number on the higher land level as the gravity would be an advantage to score. Understand the space and inhabitants. Again, gravity. Every corner, every bridges are important as in them we feel the shape and size of habitants just by doing the transition. And evidence to the senses. Space is like sounds. There are people who have it and people who don't. People who go to a place, look up and understand the space, and people who just look at the floor and walk through it. People who don't have that spatial sensibility. But that aesthetic feeling from surrounding to the space should be enough to explain the intelligence to anyone. One of the communal space designed with long platforms, 750 mm width on the water body, inviting the intimate relationship of individuals with surroundings. A stage of to reflect and involve with the nature. Suggestion on having special quality with whatever shape of space you have. It will be a wonderful experience as you're walking through into the project as on your right side is a rural landscape and on your left side is a cultivated landscape. The walking experience drawing a fine line between them to capture that evolvement. This whole landscape spatial concept provides transpersonal experience suggesting and giving back to nature. Approximately 600 acres land has been filled up for the housing development in 50 km radius from the site. It used to be paddy field. Starting with proposing all the native plant as new vegetation, around 5 acres on the left side of the site, bordered up to restore the original condition. Surely not that much compared to that 600 acres that has been violated, but it has to start from somewhere. Using landscape to provide circulation and to define legibility of the project. There's a lot of abandoned aggregate used for previous construction in the village. So I'm using back those aggregate for the ground cover at the recycle collection point. It is to avoid water ponding and wet soil in case of raining, to maintain that clean and bright environment. And this is important as this proposal to collect recycle waste, to sustain rubbish management, to educate people on cleanliness, also to have that sense of direction without any signage or label. It is sincere proposal, the most neutral, the qualitative energy that accumulates collective character on certain space with a specific details, charging them with a complex significance and cultural references with semantic material, social construction of intersubjective memories, celebrating every simple culture of the local to increase social capital, giving sense of ownership and pride to the local that this public space serve in terms of play. Thank you. Thank you.